Taking a closer look at this guy is seriously buoyant. So if you're on the lower Deschutes and you want something that's going to float all day, this is the fly you want. Segmented body looks very realistic. Those fish on the lower Deschutes see a ton of chubbies, and everywhere else where these salmon flies come off, all they see is chubbies. Normwoods, giving them something different is advantageous of you, and it helps quite a bit. So this is the new foam from Hairline, the high float foam, which has a high air bubble, count. It's very buoyant, and it has a high durometer, meaning you can crank down on it without it splitting or tearing. Then we have an additional wing up here and some web wing to give some additional flash. This is widow's web, which is what they use on most chubbies. Super good buoyant material. A little bit of a hair wing for additional bugginess and lots of legs. This thing is super good. It's got a big gap too. This is really important for foam dries. Big gap, because that foam can crowd the hook gap. So this is a Ahrex dry long number 4. It's really good. You could tie it on a couple other things, but this is the one I like. That's super sticky, and it's going to get right there when the fish eats it. It will be right where you want it. So I'll show you how to tie it. Okay, so to start here, we're taking a clipping of this 2mm high float foam in orange. This stuff right here from Hairline. Again, this is new this year. And we're going to, you have to make it uneven, and you'll see why later. I'll remind you, but you need to leave one end much longer, and you're going to punch it through this Stoneflow extended body tool. You can use a bodkin, you can use a sewing needle. This works really good because it clamps in your vise and it is rock solid in there. That is why I got one of these things, and that's why I am using it in the video also, because I think it is something that makes a difference. So what we're using here is Semperfli Nano Silk in 50 denier black, and part of the reason you have to use this foam, otherwise you have to be very careful, is other foam will split when you're clamping down on it. So you have to have this high durometer foam that can handle the compression and the shearing that this thread puts on the foam. So you're going to take this end piece, is going to be an egg sac for an ovipositing female, and you're going to kind of pinch it and clamp down on it really tight. You don't want this to come undone. This is how I do most of my extended bodies, and it works great, but you have to make sure that you kind of clamp down on it pretty hard. And to move on to the next section, you run through the slit here, open it back up here, mark where you need to put the next one down, and do the same thing and clamp. And I'm going slow for you guys here, but once you do it, you can actually do it pretty quickly. So again, we are going to split here. You're going to pull it back, mark here, and then do it again. It's pretty quick once you get the hang of it. It's kind of weird at first, but this is a really effective way to do extended bodies on stoneflies, grasshoppers, stuff like that. You could probably do a cicada like this. This works really great for stoneflies though, just because they have that kind of flat, wide body. Especially a salmonfly, you can see it looks really buggy. And so what we're going to do now is, it can kind of be uneven, but we are going to whip finish on this, and this is kind of tough. So what you're going to have to do is open it up and bring it around the front here. And you might have to do a couple, and we can always add a little bit of glue if you're unsure. But you're going to need to do a couple of these whip finishes around this right here. And that will keep it together, and we are going to put a touch of super glue on that in a sec. And to get it off, you just kind of wiggle it off. You'll see your thread pop out of the hole in the end, and then you're good. You can kind of help it off a little bit, just like that, and we'll trim that off. Same thread here we're working with, this Nano Silk. I'm going to kind of tie it in here. And what we do next is we coat this hook all the way. And if you've ever done an extended body with foam, you know that it slides all over the place. And my tip for you is you need to put something down for that foam to bite into, or it's going to go all over the place, and that's the problem. So what I'm using here, in case any of it shows through, is some Antron dubbing in orange. This is like a burnt orange. It's really bright. Kind of anything will work. If you have extra foam, whatever, you just need to put something on it. This hook we're using is the Ahrex 570 number 4, the long, dry hook, and that's how we get that really wide gap there, which is crucial for foam flies. I chose this hook strictly because you need to have that wide gap there. We're going to just kind of dub this up real quick. Like I said, you're not really going to see this. I chose orange just in case any of it peeks through. But you can kind of use whatever for this. Whatever junk you have on your desk, you just need something for the material to bite into. You can go back over it. You can make it as ugly as you want. It does not really matter. And then in a sec, we're going to cut a clip, and I'll show you how to put the foam body on and work from there. You can probably just cut it from here, right? You don't need to reach.
Yeah, I don't need to reach.
Yeah. And so the reason I made it uneven is because you need to have the short end on the top and the long end on the bottom. If you don't, your whole fly is going to be backwards. And so what you're going to do is you're going to puncture this through right in front of where the that last body section is right here, and then pull it up. And before you do that, you got to move your thread to the back here. Then we're going to scoot this up a little bit, and then we will kind of clamp this down right here. And this will be our first segment. And we're going to have 2 segments before we hit our legs, is the trick here. And so we're going to do this right here. And this is why we put the foam on, so we're not spinning all over the place here. And as you put more segments on, it'll spin less and less too. And so same as we were doing before, you got to split it right here through the side, come up front, next section, and then we'll do our legs. And then I like to do half and half once it's on the shank here. It's hard to do both at the same time. And it's easy to kind of measure out exactly how much you need too. And if you need, you can kind of wiggle it, but it all kind of blends in once everything's together. And so right here, we're going to make one more section, then we're going to put our legs on. And so kind of measure it out. This section can be kind of small because it's going to be where your legs are. Doesn't need to be huge, and you want to leave space for 2 more sections in the front. That's a crucial part here. You need to leave a little bit of space for 2 more small sections just for the head. You can make yourself crazy trying to make them perfectly even-sized. I'm kind of trying to make them even-sized for you guys because I'm supposed to make this thing look pretty. But it might not be perfect. And if yours isn't perfect, don't worry about it. Fish will still eat it. And so you can kind of wiggle it to make it all even. But see how I left an X up here? This will mark where I'm putting the legs in. And so what we're going to do right now is add that upper dark wing that you see right here. You take a piece of 1 millimeter thin fly foam right here, and we're going to tie it in front right here of where this X is, right behind. So this is going to be behind the section where the legs go on. And it should be just a tiny little bit wider than your body. And we're going to clamp it down here. It should go a little bit longer than the whole end here. And then we're going to glue it down. Before we glue it down, we're going to trim this egg sac section here down. That's how you get rid of that flaring section right here. You can just trim that off right there. Now you have a more lifelike looking end of your abdomen. We're going to put a little bit of glue here, and this will keep the whole thing together. If you'd like, you can use glue on almost about every step of this fly. If you're worried, I found it doesn't really need it. It actually stays together pretty good. I've been fishing this style of extended body for a couple of years now. And it's works great for me. It started for me with the goldstones, but salmon fly is a great excuse to tie something like this. So we're going to glue that on, and again, you can X up here, back to the front of the leg section here, kind of mark. And then the other thing we need to do is we need to put on a little piece of this web wing material, and this is dun color, and this will kind of add a little bit of flash. Again, this isn't super crucial to have on the fly. This is kind of a little bit of extra decoration. What it will add is it'll add that kind of shimmer that a natural, when they have their wings tucked behind them, that is something that the fish do see on a still stone. And that may be important for you. If your black is a little too long too, you can trim it right now. But this is going to lay over the back, and you can just do a little tiny dot of glue to help hold this down. You do not want this flapping all over the place, because that's just going to spin up your whole leader, and you don't want that. So don't worry how long this is, you can trim this down again. We're going to make this just longer than the black body, and that's going to be suggestive right here of a little bit of the wings sticking out on the back. And so you can kind of round the edges here if you need. You know, and that looks good to me. And then what we'll do is we'll pull this up and trim this excess off. And then from here on out, we're kind of past the hardest part of the fly. We're going to stick the legs on and then the hair, and then you just pull the head over and we're pretty much done. So this is a medium orange barred sexy floss leg from MFC. You'll see the pack is in a U shape, and if you pull one whole strand out, that's enough for this whole fly for both sides. Okay, so there's a natural curve to these legs, you can see right here, and you want that always flaring out with these. So what we're going to do is we're going to tie one end in here, and don't worry about proportions right now. You know, you can have one end super long, you can have one end super short, it doesn't matter. The beauty of these legs is you can always pull them back through and readjust. And so once you have both ends in like this, we're going to crisscross up the front like this. I can't really do it, but I can kind of show you. I'll do it and show you after I do it real quick. And now you can see you caught both front legs right here. So now that that's done, you can kind of do a couple of X's over the top of that. A trick to get this out of your way is to pull the whole thing behind. That'll get that whole thing out of your way. Now what we're going to do is we don't really need this anymore. This whole thing can go. So what I do is I clip the whole thing off, and then I just clamp the whole thing down, and it stays out of my way forever. You don't want to trim it too short, because if the whole thing comes undone, you are in trouble. But if we pull this away, just clamp, you know, this stuff compresses down to almost nothing. And so this is where our hair is going to go in. If any of you are wondering right now where that third leg is, it's going to be put in at the end. What we need now is we need to put in a little bit of crystal flash in the wing before we do the hair. And this crystal flash is really popular to put in when you put in wings. This is root beer. This is one of my most used colors of crystal flash, so if you're thinking of getting it, I'd say this and pearl are the most useful. So we're going to tie just a couple strands in here. Don't worry how long it is, we'll trim it down. Smoke colored widow's web. We are going to trim, put a little bit in. Less is more for this fly. You don't need a whole lot. You don't want to make this thing too big, because when it gets wet, it will be a little cumbersome. This stuff is the most absorbent material on this fly, and it's not very absorbent as it is, so you don't want a whole lot of it. Otherwise, you can have a problem. You want to let the foam do all the work. So we'll trim this after the end here. Again, to help this thing stay streamlined, to make it easier to cast, we will put a tiny little dot of glue on the section where the legs went in. We'll pull it back real quick and let it cure and help press it down. This helps give it that salmon fly look when they have their wings tucked behind, just like that. And then now we're going to put in a little bit of hairs. So now that this synthetic wing is in, we're going to put just a little bit of deer hair in. And again, here, less is more, and we're running out of space up here, so we're going to have to scoot this thread back pretty close, right back here, and we're going to measure before we clamp it down to about, you know, just past the second legs towards the abdomen, and we're going to pull this, and it flares. And this is fine because the foam is going to help push it back, but what you need to do is you need to make your thread wraps a little bit wider to compress more of it in case it slips. And then we're going to cut through the middle slowly until there's nothing left, until we're all the way up here. And then once you do enough wraps here, you know you're safe. And then we can actually take most of this and in one clip get most of it gone, which makes working with deer hair a lot easier if you do it this way. So if you just run real close down here and trim, and then these stragglers you can pull up and trim. Great. The problem is if you trim it too close, you don't have much to come over. This right here, what I'm doing is securing that hair in so it will never move. And if you trim it too close, you're not going to have anything to help secure in. So now that this hair is in, we're going to just bring this up and around, and then we're pretty much done with this fly. If you have space, adding a little bit of your dubbing in up here, and this is again why I picked orange, because this might peek through over here, is we're just going to add a little bit so the foam has some stuff to bite into right here. Just a little bit. We're just coating it just enough. But we're making 2 more segments and then pulling the whole thing over, and the fly will be done. It's kind of cool how it's done. I don't know what the technique is called, but it actually punches the eyelet through the front of the fly, and it actually looks pretty cool. And so we built a little taper here, and now I'm going to show you from the bottom here. You can see we have sections here, and we need to make another segment here. So I try to scoot as close as I can back to the hair to give myself some space to work. We'll make 1 more section. And again, don't be bashful cranking on this stuff. As long as you get the correct foam, you can crank on it pretty good. And so we're going to pull here, and then we're going to do a couple of wraps to make sure that's secured. We'll come up here, 1 more. And you want to leave some space. And I'll show you kind of where I measured. See how I left a little bit of space right there? You need to leave some space. The beauty of this foam too is if you made a mistake, you can undo it and pull it back around. Now, what we're going to do here is we are going to, there's 2 ways you can do this. You can guess and punch a hole here, or what I like to do is you can, we'll actually move the camera and you can make a little slit in the front. Okay, and so what I was saying is as you pull, you can see that's where the eyelet is, right? So if you have a good pair of scissors, you can take your scissors here and just kind of help it split, just like this. And with some pressure, again, this is why I love this new foam. Hairline, really did a good job with this and selecting colors, is we're just going to kind of help it split a little bit as we pull. And a razor blade would work great for this. I don't have one right now, so my scissors are going to have to help for me. Again, you can also try to punch a hole. Let's see how it splits. And right there, we're through. And so you'll see my thread is on this last segment towards the front. We're going to cross it over the top and be sure not to let it touch the foam to keep it intact so we don't cross over the bottom. And then we'll pull this back to create the head and pinch it down. And that's how we create the head, as well as that kind of magic eyelet that just shoots out of the front. And then we'll take a bunch of wraps and we'll do several whip finishes here. You can add glue if you want. To help, you can add resin, whatever you need. This nanosilk doesn't really go anywhere. I trust it a lot. Several whip finishes too aren't coming undone. Okay, so now we're done here. This fly is pretty much done. We're going to take a trimming here. And then we'll trim each corner off. Right here. And that's your little, that's like a little visible hot spot right there. And then you'll see we still have these legs pulled to the back, so you can kind of reach into the back evenly here. I don't know if you guys can see that, but we're going to trim. And those legs come forward. And yes, they're too long, and we'll cut them down. And the last thing we're going to do is punch a leg through here. And so, because of the way this fly is made, you can actually run a bodkin through, or even a bobbin thread here through. And with the help of... Now, because this was made like half and half, you can run it through, and we'll take our bobbin thread up here through the little hole we made with our bodkin. That just makes it a little easier. And then we'll take half of one of these. Instead of pulling a whole one out, you just take half, and we're going to pull it through. You got your other leg, and that is good. And then now all we have to do to this fly is color it up a little bit. When I'm coloring a salmon fly, a lot of dark here. Where the legs attach, it's very dark. The head is very dark. So I'm taking a brown Copic marker right here and darkening this, and then dots along the back edges, as well as along here. The whole idea of this fly is to get an advantage with a really realistic look. And so... Also, to help with that, this color's a little bit too peachy, so we'll add a little bit of this kind of yellowish color. I will link it below, the exact color, to kind of make it look more like natural of a salmon fly color. We'll leave this uncolored right here, because this is our indicator right here. You can also leave it a little bit longer. I trimmed that one a little short. And the last thing we're going to do is often the salmon flies that end up in the river are ovipositing, meaning they're laying eggs. And the females have a big kind of bluish black egg sac back here. So a blue marker back here will make that egg sac right there. If you'd like, you can give your fly eyes. And then we'll trim the fly down and be done. This is the Mothership Salmonfly. if you need an edge in the salmonfly hatch and to give the fish something they haven't seen, that looks pretty realistic and floats all day, this is your fly. You can get everything at caddisflyshop.com, and there's a full write-up on the OregonFlyFishingBlog.com. Thanks.